Part 1.
A woman has just arrived at a shopping mall with her children. You will hear her talking to a man at the information desk. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Right. Now, I heard there's a children's play centre where you can leave your children while you do the shopping.
That's right. You can see it on the floor plan. It's in the corner, to the left of the supermarket. There are plenty of toys for them to play with there. Also, there's fresh fruit to eat, and they can have fun with the other children.
Sounds good, doesn't it, kids? I was thinking I might take them to have their hair cut first. Is that the hairdresser between the furniture shop and the children's clothes shop?
Yes, it is. They do children's haircuts as well.
Oh, lovely. Now, my little boy's going to a friend's birthday party next week, and we wanted to buy a present. Do you know if there are any stores that might have things a 7-year-old boy would like?
Oh, yes. There's a toy store right next to the shoe shop. They've got a good range of toys. I'm sure you'll find something for a child of that age. I often buy things there myself. The prices are quite reasonable.
Oh, that's good to hear. Oh, and also, are there any toilets on this floor?
Yes, they're in a bit of a hidden corner. You just go past the bookstore. You can see they sell newspapers there too, and down the corridor.
Oh, yes, I see. I'd better take them there before we go to the hairdresser. What else do I need to do? Oh, yeah, I've got to buy some credit for my mobile phone. Can I do that at the phone kiosk over there near those benches?
Yes, you can. You can also do it at the supermarket if you want.
Right. Now, we've just come up from the car park, but we took the escalator. I might have a lot of things to carry later on, so I was wondering if there's an elevator.
Yes, it's next to the computer store, near the top of the stairs.
Oh, yes, I can see it now.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10.
Oh, when I parked the car, I couldn't see how much you have to pay for parking.
It's free for the first 2 hours, but after that it's $3 an hour.
Oh, well, I think with all the things we have to do, we might be here for more than 2 hours. So if you park there for 3 hours altogether, you have to pay $3, and if it's 4 hours, you pay $6, and so on.
Yes, that's right.
Uh-huh. How about the children's play centre? Is there any charge for leaving your children there?
Oh, no, that's a free service of the shopping mall. However, there's a policy that the children have to be at least 18 months old.
Oh, my youngest is just 10 months old, but I'd rather keep her with me anyway. Also, we might need to get something to eat later. Is there any place to buy lunch?
Oh, yes. You can get all kinds of things at the food court, from snacks to fast food to healthy meals. There's a really good range. It's 2 floors up on level 5. It's best to take the elevator.
Do you know if they have pizza? Both my kids really love pizza.
Yes, they do. Oh, did you know you can watch a movie here, too?
Yes, I've heard there's a cinema on the top floor. There might be something on that my kids would be interested in.
Yeah, there are a couple of children's films on at the moment.
Well, thank you very much. You've been a great help.
My pleasure.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute
to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a bank representative briefing a group of customers on how to register for online banking. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 to 16.
We're very pleased to announce the launch of our new online service. Now, though it might sound a little daunting for those of you who are not so familiar with the internet, let me assure you that the registration process is very simple indeed. I'm going to go through it with you step by step today, and afterwards there'll be a question and answer session should you have anything you would like to ask. The first thing you must do before you can gain access to our online services is send us the profile request form over the internet through our online portal, making sure you attach a scanned copy of your passport to go with the form. Then you'll have to wait for verification within 5 business days. Once you're verified, you'll then be sent your own personal verification code number, and you'll need to input this on the link I've posted at the top of the handout I've given you. www.hcbs.com/ACC setup. Once you enter the verification code, you'll be taken to the registration page, where you'll be asked to complete and send through your online account registration form. Having done that, you'll then receive an email message asking you to confirm that you're the owner of the email address you have supplied. Simply log into your email account and follow the link in the message you've been sent to the account update page. You will then be prompted to enter the details of your bank cards and all accounts held at the bank to complete your online profile. Once you've linked your cards and accounts to the profile, click the Update button on the top left of the screen. This will take you to the activation page. One click of the activation button and you're then set up to go and can start using your online accounts immediately.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20.
When you've done all that, you'll be able to log in and out of your account as you please. I'd like to draw your attention to the screen now for a moment. What you're seeing is an example of a member's online profile. This is the welcome page. Centre top, a list of your accounts and balances will always be displayed. You can click on any account on the list to see more details or customize a statement. When you want to log out, simply click the button at the top left of your screen. Directly under it, you'll see a button named Edit. Clicking on this will take you to your profile page where you can amend your customer details as often as you like. While you are navigating, should you ever want to return to the welcome page, simply click the Home button located at the top right of the screen and you'll be taken back to the welcome page immediately. Next, take a look at the drop-down action menu just below the centre of the screen. This gives you quick access to the online transactions portal, where you'll have the freedom to effect online transactions at the click of a button. One last thing I'd like to point out is the fact that there should always be a lock icon on both the bottom right and left of the screen. This confirms that your connection to our server is secure and safe. If the lock is ever missing from your screen, log out immediately and report it to our customer service team, who are available 24 hours a day at 1-800-365-365.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear two students talking to their teacher about a seminar paper they are preparing for their population studies class. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25.
So, how's your seminar paper going?
Oh, it's almost ready. My head's just full of statistics at the moment.
Is there anything you found particularly interesting?
Yeah. For instance, about where people choose to live when they migrate to Australia. The focus of our talk is on migration to Sydney, but we found we needed to look briefly at migration to other parts of Australia as well.
Most migrants go to the big cities, but it isn't the same for all nationalities. For instance, over the last 5 years, with the British, only about 1/3 of them altogether went to Sydney and Melbourne.
So where did most of them go?
Oh, all over the place. But for some reason quite a few ended up over in Perth.
Oh, that's not a bad place to live.
No, but with the Chinese, 26% of them choose to live in Melbourne and 58% in Sydney.
Really? Do you have any idea why the Chinese and British have such different settlement patterns?
Well, not really. Sometimes it's hard to find out exactly why people choose to live where they do. There's a thriving Lebanese community in Melbourne, but more than 7 out of 10 people from Lebanon were drawn to Sydney.
I see. So you've covered groups from Europe, East Asia and the Middle East. Do you have anything on people from other regions?
Yes. When we went through data from the Department of Immigration and the Bureau of Statistics, we found that in the case of the Malaysians, for some reason only a minority chose Sydney and Melbourne, but I don't know exactly where most of them ended up. I think quite a few of them were attracted to Queensland because of the climate.
Yeah, it must be hard for people coming from a tropical region to get used to colder winters. What about the New Zealanders?
Well, they don't need a visa for Australia, so they're counted separately from all other nationalities. But the vast bulk of them have ended up in Sydney. You'd think that Melbourne would be more to their liking because its climate's more like what they're used to, and the distance from New Zealand to Melbourne is about the same.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30.
You also looked into why people choose the places they do, didn't you?
Yes. Well, people often go where the work is. I mean, it's no use finding a nice place to live if you're going to be unemployed. But there's a more decisive factor, And that is that people generally like to live near their friends and relatives, and with people from their own country, so they won't be so isolated. And they do that despite the higher housing prices in the larger cities.
Yeah, rents are getting ridiculous. But hasn't Sydney always attracted people? I mean, even people born elsewhere in Australia.
Well, historically that was the case, but even though Sydney's grown a lot recently, there's been hardly any increase in the number of Australian-born people living in Sydney.
Why is that? I mean, I can understand why people would be leaving. A lot of people feel Sydney's getting too crowded and hectic.
But that can't be the reason, because they often end up in places such as southeast Queensland, where the infrastructure simply isn't coping with the rapid population growth and faster pace of life.
The research shows that the ones leaving Sydney are particularly middle-aged and elderly people who own the place they live in. By selling their Sydney home when they retire and buying and living in a cheaper one elsewhere, they then have more funds left over.
It must be difficult making that shift at their age.
I think moving or migrating's hard for anyone.
Quite right. But what effect is migration having?
Well, there are all kinds of effects. But sociologists talk about a growing gap between Sydney and Melbourne on the one hand and the rest of the country on the other. You see, the most recent data shows that 60% of the overseas arrivals went to those two cities, even though Sydney and Melbourne combined have got just 40% of the country's population.
But you've got to remember that Australia is one of the most urbanised countries in the world. A good 50% of the population live in the state capitals, not including the urban fringes. Is anything being done to promote growth in other regions?
Well, the government's got several proposals. We need more people in rural areas, but no one's suggesting that we encourage farmers to migrate to Australia because agriculture is very capital intensive in this country. But the government's thinking about having lower tax rates on private firms that employ newly arrived migrants in towns outside Sydney and Melbourne. Of course, these days the government doesn't want to actually provide jobs for them, but they are willing to favour employers who employ them.
Do you think that'd work?
I don't know. There's nothing to stop them moving to one of the two big cities if they feel like it.
Exactly.
In fact, the statistics don't give the full picture. When they migrate, people very often initially live outside of Sydney. So in the statistics, they're recorded as having settled outside Sydney. But then after a while, many make the move to Sydney. So the real picture's even more out of balance than what the statistics say.
Statistics really can be a slippery thing sometimes, can't they?
That's for sure.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear part of a talk given by a professor for a marketing course. In the talk, he compares different makes and models of a type of car called Super Mini, for which the students will work out advertising strategies for their final projects. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Now, sales of super minis. And if you don't know, super minis are a particular class of small but luxurious car. Sales have taken off in the past few years, and there are a number of factors behind this trend. One of the primary reasons is the price of fuel. Super minis are relatively economical, so customers are turning to them as a means to reduce the fuel bill. The second reason is also a financial one. Both tax and insurance are very reasonable where super minis are concerned. Then there is the fact that super minis don't lose their value as quickly as larger cars, not to mention the ease with which the narrow city streets can be navigated. These advantages are present across the board in all makes of super mini. These cars have undoubtedly become desirable, and with so many available in the market now, this creates a challenge for the developers of advertisement campaigns, which is exactly why I've chosen this sector for your final projects. As you know, you'll be working in teams, and each team will be allotted one of these brands by lottery, but we'll take care of that next week. In today's lecture, I'm going to give you an overview of the different brands. I'd suggest you keep notes, perhaps make yourselves a table, because you'll need the information as you develop your project, both for your brand and that of your, shall we say, competitors. So, let's move on to the brands and their differences. One of the most popular brands of Super Mini is the Ford Fiesta, loved for its affordability and for its competitively low running costs. The Fiesta's popularity also ensures that it holds its value on the second-hand car market too, though one major flaw we have identified in its design is the fact that the boot is extremely cramped. The Vauxhall Corsa is another fine example of a Super Mini. It is light to steer, offers great all-round visibility, is relatively easy and very economical to drive. But if you think all this sounds too good to be true, then unfortunately you're right. The advantages of this little runaround don't come cheap, and the Corsa is considered comparatively pricey when judged against the other options available. So you might want to think about particular buyers to whom you could market this. Now, France's contribution to the Super Mini market is the Renault Clio. Known for its exterior styling, the Clio is also extremely reliable and well equipped. That said, there are some serious weaknesses too. For a start, the Clio is extremely cramped inside. This problem is only compounded by the Clio's other major flaw, the unbearably awkward driving position. Volkswagen, on the other hand, achieved a great deal when developing the Polo for the Super Mini market. The Polo is a very enjoyable drive and is reliable and perhaps, just as importantly, inexpensive to repair when breakdowns do occur. This is largely thanks to the car's excellent build quality. The only flaw, really, is the fact that the Polo's engine is underpowered, which is all the more disappointing when you consider that it ticks so many other boxes. Another car attempting to make headway in the Super Mini market is the Peugeot 203, a car that is renowned for its stylish interior and which pleasantly surprises many a new owner once they realise how spacious it is too, being particularly generous in that respect in the boot area. What are its drawbacks? Well, the driving position leaves a massive amount to be desired, not to mention the fact that the basic model has virtually no extras or special features. Far too low spec for my liking. The truth is,
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.